Good evening and welcome to 45South TV News for Tuesday the 16th of September. I'm Noel Bradshaw and I shall be reading your news this evening as supplied by the Oamaru Mail. First up we have Lotto strikes again in Oamaru. Oamaru Lotto ticket buyers have struck gold over the last week, with 800,000 having been won, although the winners have not yet come forward. Following a 600,000 win at the Oamaru Paper Plus the week before, a first division prize of 200,000 was won at the weekend from Lotto and Things on Thames Street. It is a rarity for the town to have back-to-back wins of such a large amount in successive weeks. The 600,000 ticket was won through Strike 4 with an Auckland resident, so the prize was split, while the $200,000 was a $1 million first division prize split between 5 people. Lotto and Things owner Jan Denny, who owns the business with her husband Paul, said it was fantastic to having a winning ticket purchased from the store. Unfortunately not mine. Rural Fire Force seeking more members. It's the time of the year where things begin to get busy for firefighters, and Waitaki Rural Fire Force Deputy Controller Matt Henderson says this year will be no different. The numbers of the Rural Fire Force are sitting steady at 18 members, but they would like to see an increase. Ideally we'd love to have close to 25 members if we could, Mr Henderson said. The Rural Fire Force is based at Whitestone Contracting Yard in Alma, where it has been for the last 6 years. Before that, the force was based in Chalmers Street at the recycling yard. Mr Henderson said how busy they were likely to become depended on the dryness of the summer. It depends what the weather is like over winter and how busy we are, he said. The members of the group are all volunteers. The Rural Fire Force was started in 1993. Volunteers are trained for civil defence emergencies and some are trained in flood response. People who join up will be trained. Joining did not involve too much time, Mr Henderson said. Commitment to training for a couple of hours every second Wednesday and on occasion additional training at weekends, and of course attendances to any calls that they may get. Youth Council going from strength to strength. The Oamaru Youth Council intends to report to the Waitaki District Council biannually in an effort to strengthen ties between the two bodies, according to a report being received at tomorrow's meeting of the District Council. Youth Council Chairperson Jessie Waite said in the report that a District Councillor would be invited to join Councillor Melanie Tavendale at each monthly meeting. St Kevin's College Horse Arena progressing. The St Kevin's College Horse Arena is well on schedule for its official opening next month. Assistant Principal Joe Walsh said horse riding was a popular activity amongst pupils at the school, and the idea of having a specific area for pupils to keep their horses seemed like something worth investing in. We knew it was something which had to be constructed with the amount of people we have had asking about horses at the school. While the final costs of the arena have yet to be counted, the school has received help from Pine Gould Guinness, Wrightson and a bequest to help fund the project, while they were hoping for sponsorship to fund the rest of the equestrian area. The amount of interest in the new horse arena had been amazing, Miss Walsh said. I was expecting 6 people, but so far we have had 16 people wanting to be involved next year, and it's a mix of both male and female pupils, which is fantastic, she said. Equine studies were introduced to the school in the second term this year, and will be offered as NCEA achievement standards and level 2 and 3 from next year, and year 9 to 10 will also be allowed to participate in the course. Beer Expo cancels train from Oamaru. The Dunedin Craft Beer Expo has cancelled its proposed train from Oamaru to the event this weekend due to a lack of interest. It was decided last Friday that the Expo, which is being held on Saturday, would not offer the 8-carriage train from Oamaru because only 40 tickets had been sold. Organiser Matthew Black said they had offered a bus ride for those who bought tickets, but it would not be necessary as the majority of people said they would find their own way there and back. So that's the news, and I shall return shortly with your weather and this evening's programs. Well, here we are again, and the weather today, Tuesday, at 1 p.m. was 13 degrees, and the overnight low will be 5 degrees. Tomorrow, Wednesday, the high will be 10 degrees, and the overnight low 4 degrees. A few showers with southerlies, then clearing, very much like today. Sunrise 6:34 a.m, sunset 6:27 p.m. Tides for Wednesday, the high is 10:37 a.m, and also 11:04 p.m. The lows 4:24 a.m. and 4:42 p.m. And tonight's programs, we're starting off with Constable Bruce Dow's fortnightly police report, followed by agribusiness, keeping tools sharp. So enjoy your programs this evening.
You chuck it on that one and you chuck it on me. Bad boys, what you gonna do? Or what you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys.
Hello and welcome to 45 South Television Fortnightly Police Report. I'm Community Constable Bruce Dow. The past weekend saw some damage to 3 vehicles parked in a yard in Thames Street, car dealer's yard, and it's disappointing to see that damage. Also, damage was reported in the precinct outside the Art Society building, where once again large pot plants were smashed, and a window in the former Oamaru Ordinary Cycle Club buildings was also broken. We're also having problems with the former railway station in Humber Street. There has been damage caused to that building, ongoing damage I could add, and also the building has been broken into on more than one occasion. So in that area we are having problems with burglaries in the either precinct area or Humber Street area. And to go a wee bit further out into the Friendly Bay playground area, we've still got issues down there with damage and litter being left behind, as in dangerous litter being left behind, as well as ordinary litter from food, etc. Disappointing to see, because that area is now becoming a very popular place to be, especially at weekends and especially for families and children. So my plea is that if you're down there at any stage and you see things that are happening that shouldn't be happening, that you don't just simply ignore it and say it's not my problem. I believe that it is our problem, it's a community problem, and we should be dealing with it as a community. And if you feel free enough to give us a ring on the 111 line if it's happening there and then, do that, make that phone call so some police can get down there. Even if we're too late, we can at least be showing the flag down there and hopefully taking preventative measures by just driving around there. Since the beginning of August, we have had 31 burglaries in Oamaru. Of those 31, 11 have involved garages or sheds, and of those 11, almost all have been insecure in some way, shape or form. Now, I don't like to keep beating the same drum, but if only people would secure their property properly, we would have probably reduced that number of 31 by half at least. It's a simple act of locking up your property, and just this morning I was speaking to one of my colleagues who was going crook about his partner, who he discovered had left the keys in her car overnight while it was in their driveway. So none of us are immune from being lazy or careless or forgetfulness. Remove your keys from ignition, lock your cars up, lock your sheds up, lock your garages up, lock your houses up if you're leaving it. Simple act, but one that makes life so much easier if you're not being targeted for a burglary, and can make life awfully difficult if someone has broken into your car, your shed, your garage, your house, and remove property from it that you simply wouldn't want or can't be replaced. Who wants that? I'm sure none of us do. So if I can just drive that message home once again, I know I've said it on like a stuck record, to simply lock up your property, make sure that you don't make things easy for burglars out there and car thieves. Also, we do know that there are theft decks cars going on, in particular in the South Hill area. Once again, we have offenders or offender wandering around that area, and it's a big area, at night, trying car doors, and in some cases being successful because the car door is unlocked. Don't make it easy for offenders, please. And also, you'll save us some work, but that's not the issue here. One act of family violence over the weekend that occurred in Palmerston. So one male slapped his partner, or actually his wife, knocking her to the ground, and he's been arrested and will be in court tomorrow. Oamaru Court is tomorrow, and Oamaru Court Day is chock-a-block. It has been a month since Oamaru held a court, and it is so full tomorrow that cases have been put off already till the October hearing. So court days used to be fortnightly. Currently they've been running at a month apart. The reason for it, I'm unable to tell you because I simply don't know, but it has the effect of this court day on the 17th is that it is chock-a-block, and cases that can be put off will be put off to the October. Just a refresher, the Oamaru Courthouse has moved. It is no longer in the Opera House. Probably the folks there are more than happy about that. I don't think they particularly wanted the clientele on every second Wednesday back then hanging around the Opera House. Nice building, nice restaurant, cafe. The Oamaru Hearing Centre, which it's now called, is behind the Bryden Hotel in the car park. Temporary building being placed there, and I think we're on to our second court date on tomorrow to hold court in that building. So that's where it's now being held. It's a public place. You're very welcome to go to that hearing. You can sit down there as a spectator/visitor. You don't need to be connected with a offender, somebody appearing in court. You can just simply rock up, observe what's going on, and I recommend you do that. If you've got some spare time and you want to see what's going on in the justice system, my opinion to you is that you take the time, pop down there, grab a seat, and just watch what's going on and just be informed and see what you think. And if you do that, dare I say it, I wouldn't mind knowing your thoughts. Let me know. We had an incident yesterday where we were more than happy to take some firearms off a man. He was concerned he had perhaps reached the point where he could potentially misuse his firearms, and contacted police and says, "Can you come and take them off me?" Now, we think that's pretty commendable. We were more than happy to do that. We obtained from him his firearms licence, so he can't go and get any more without obtaining them illegally, dare I say it. He won't do that. He's decided that he's at risk, and we're actually really happy that he's done that. Now, my point here is, if you know of anyone out there, or if you are looking and you're in the same predicament, if you think things might be getting on top of you and that you might act unpredictably, we would be more than happy to do what we did and collect your firearms, secure them, store them safely, including your firearms licence. And when the time comes and you think you're all sweet and things have moved on in your life and everything's rosy, we would be happy to return them and keep people and yourself safe. So, just a wee bit of a side issue there. It doesn't happen often. In fact, I don't remember it happening. Just trying to rattle my brains now. I don't ever think it's happened, to be honest, where someone's actually taken the step of contacting us and saying why they think they should not have their firearms, being honest up front, and us collecting them. So, good call there. Moving on to revocations, I had an incident in June where I had to do a security check. I'm up to about 225 now. So I've got a wee bit of experience in what's security and what's good, what is secure and what is not. In that June inspection of that property, I found it was probably one of the worst of that 225. The outside door to the house was open. The internal door was unlocked. It had a combination lock, but it was unlocked, and it was actually open. The two-door cabinet was wide open. The firearms were either in the cabinet, clearly visible, or a couple outside it, hanging up or leaning up against the cabinet. I carried out what we would like to term a professional chat to that gentleman, advising him, one, that he had failed the security check, and two, that he was a pretty poor example of a licensed firearms holder, a person that we would be trying to point out as being negligent, irresponsible, in other words, and to pull his socks up and not to continue to keep his firearms in that manner. And I said to him, the process from here is that I will be just simply reporting what I've found, and any other action after that will be up to the arms officer in Dunedin. I actually expected a revocation to come through, but it didn't. What did come through was a second check, which I carried out in the past week. And when I arrived at the address, I rocked up in my police car. I knew the room that the cabinet was in. I could see it from where I was parked. I could see a shotgun belt with shotgun cartridges hanging up on the cabinet door, which was wide open once again. On looking through the window, I could see the firearms clearly visible and the back door of the premise unlocked and the house vacant. Just so that it wasn't a one-off, I did a check the following day and nothing had changed, which was incredibly disappointing. The professional chat that I had with him in June appears to have slipped in one ear and raced out the other. Not sure if there was much in between, but that's okay. I didn't bother to check that. But he will probably, almost certainly, be served with consideration or revocation papers. That means that he will be given a chance to explain his actions, to explain why he should continue to hold a firearms licence. And that chat will be with an inspector of police or a commissioned officer of police. And I'm not going to predict anything there, but I suspect that he's not in a good position at the moment to make himself look pretty good. So watch this space. Just a precautionary note, firearms security is paramount. If you're a firearms licence holder, if you know someone who's got a firearms licence, it is paramount that those firearms are secured. And if they're not, and we find them, woe betide anyone that we find. In this case, there will be action taken. And one of the criteria for holding or obtaining a firearms licence is that you must have adequate security, and if there is any lapse, you fail to become fit and proper. So that's the test. It's been brought to my attention that there are a number of people in this town who have dementia and who are continuing to drive motor vehicles. Now, as I understand it, that's not a major issue until a certain point is reached in that person's condition. And at that point, then there is a problem. And at that point, we need to, or someone needs to take some action regarding that driver's licence. Cannot have people driving around this town who are fully declared dementia patients at a certain stage of their condition. Now, I for one have no desire or want to be involved in dementia. I don't want it. No one wants it. We don't have any choice, and dare I say it, one day I might. But there are people in this town that we know do. We have had trouble leaving buildings and know how to get out of it. They're that far advanced, but they hop into their cars and they drive away. Frankly, that's not good enough, because I don't want to have a head-on crash with some dementia patient that thinks he's on the right side of the road and he's actually on the wrong. Well, it could be a she, that is. If anyone out there has knowledge of someone in their community, in their family, who has dementia and has reached the point in that condition where they have become unsafe to drive, then we need, or someone needs to be told about it to have that person's driver's licence removed. I hate to say it, but it's not a nice thing to do, to remove someone's driver's licence. But if it has to happen, then it has to happen. Need I say any more? You'll probably see some sign of life that you didn't see in the past. We're outside WIN's office. WIN's now operates with a number of security guards at the front door. If you need to go to WIN's, you just can't simply rock up. You will need to make an appointment, probably through the 0800 number. You'll need to have some form of ID before you arrive at the door, because you'll be asked for it to prove who you are, because there'll be a list at the door that says you're expected, and if you haven't got ID, then you probably won't be accepted. So if you are going there for any reason, whether it be for benefit, superannuation or whatever, you just simply cannot no longer rock up there. You'll have 2 doors to go through. Both of them will be have a guard at them, and they'll be checking your ID, checking to make sure that you have an appointment and that you are able to go in there legitimately. We all know why that is, and it's unfortunate, and I'm very sorry that it's happened like that, as is everyone in the community, and including the staff at WINS. But we are supporting them wholeheartedly over this, and we'll do whatever we can. We're making random visits through WINS, so if you're in there one day and you see a cop walking through, you know he's probably not there for you. He's there just to show the flag and to make ourselves pretty visible, and we don't want anything happening in Oamaru that happened in Ashburton, I'm afraid to say. So that's just a pre-warning about WINS if you have to pop in there for whatever reason. I've noticed around town a number of people just pulling onto the wrong side of the road and stopping and parking. Well, you maybe do that when you're in America, but well, no, you probably don't, because it's the opposite side of the road. So you don't park on the wrong side of the road. It's a sign of arrogance, ignorance, and it's going to cost you $40 for a parking ticket. And my message to you out there is, who thinks they can just pull onto the wrong side of the road, step out of the vehicle and go into the shop or go into the house or do whatever. Don't do it. It's a sign of arrogance, and you deserve a ticket if you haven't already got one. Just a word of warning about the paraplegic parks, the ones that are painted blue, one outside the library and one outside New Zealand Post in Coquette Street. Don't be caught parking one of those for 2 reasons. One is if you're not a paraplegic, or not paraplegic, that's not weird. If you have a disability, beg your pardon. If you park in one of those disability parks and you don't hold a disability card, you will be in receipt potentially of quite a substantial fine. It's in the range of 3 figures. Not sure what it is exactly, but it's certainly not a standard $40 parking ticket. Don't use those disability parks. They are there for a jolly good reason. If you're fit and able to, go and park down the road a bit further where you can walk back to wherever you have to go to, and don't let some disabled person have to do the same thing, whereas they could have been parking outside the building itself and it's designed for them. So don't show that sign of ignorance by, it'll just be a couple of minutes, a couple of seconds. Well, in that period of time, someone with a disability and with a card could be trying to get a park and find you a park there. They don't have any idea of how long you might be in New Zealand Post or in the library or wherever. So don't be ignorant. Don't park in a disability park if you're fit and able and you don't have a disability and or a card to prove it. For some people who don't realise this, we get to attend sudden deaths, and our process there is if someone passes away, put it this way, most people who pass away for natural reasons, and a doctor will be able to say what that natural reason is. If, for instance, a person hasn't been to a GP or a doctor for some period of time, and they've been found dead, we will get called by St John usually. Someone usually finds the person, calls St John. St John arrive there, they declare the person deceased. They can't issue any doctor certificate or any certificate to say why someone's died, so they call us in the first instance. If we generally make inquiries, find out who the GP might have been. If we find out from the GP that the person has been there in the past week and they've had a history of heart disease or whatever, the doctors are usually generally happy to issue a certificate as to the reason why that person died. The problem arises when the person who's deceased either hasn't been to a doctor or hasn't been to a doctor for some period of time, and so therefore no doctor in his right mind will say why that person died. He might have formed an opinion, but he can't say. So unfortunately for us, we have to inform the coroner. The coroner then informs the funeral director, and the coroner then arranges a post-mortem examination on that person. That's the process. It doesn't go on to an inquest, because 9.999 times out of 10, that person has died from a natural cause, and any other inquest or inquiry into that death is usually dispensed with. But people get a bit of a scare when they see us rocking up in our uniforms when someone's passed away, probably one of the worst times of their lives, and having police involved. Who really wants that? But it's one of those things that does have to occur, and it does occur relatively frequently, unfortunately. But most times we manage to slip out of there, and that's the end of our dealings in that house, fortunately. Well, sorry to end on that note. It's a bit of a sombre note, but that's just something the way it ended up. Unfortunately, I probably should have made it a bit sooner, but that's the case. I thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again next time.
What you gonna do when they come for you?
I'm out at the agribusiness course, and I have with me
Jenny Pirano.
Jenny Pirano. Good. And for this course, you've been running for how many weeks?
This is probably the 11th week we've been doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So this course is made up of practical and theory, and tonight is just a practical part of the small machinery maintenance, tool maintenance class.
Right. So the other 6 weeks have covered what?
The other weeks we've been doing the theory class on pruning and 6 practicals. And we're going out to people's places and attacking plants and generally having a good prune up.
Excellent. Well, tonight is particularly on sharpening.
Just on sharpening and just maintaining your machinery and that sort of thing. So that's why I brought Gary along just to help us with this.
Okay. Well, welcome, Gary.
Hello, how are you?
You know all about, you keep all your tools and everything at home in top condition, of course.
Of course I do.
Anyway, tell me your particular interest in this.
I've just come along to show people how to sharpen a chainsaw and some of their hand tools, knives, secateurs and other tools relevant to pruning and training plants.
Do you physically do sharpening yourself, or you recommend who to do it?
I do all my own myself, but if I was a novice, I would probably recommend you take it to a dealer to get them sharpened for you. And if you're only using it for domestic use, you're probably not going to bludgeon a chainsaw too much.
So, sizes of chainsaws, or what you use for doing what with? I'm thinking of doing a box hedge as against cutting up for firewood.
Yes, there's various sizes, and obviously I've got quite a large chainsaw over there, which is only really good for cutting out large firewood and forestry, while you can get a chainsaw right down to 12 inches, which is ideal for doing more work in the garden around the home. It's a lot more smaller and easier to handle. But if you're thinking about using a chainsaw, I would recommend you do a full safety course on them first, because they're very dangerous. Every business run courses quite regularly.
Right, well I'll let you back. What are you working on right now?
We're just going to go over how to change a chain over and how to sharpen a chain once we've done that.
Good. Thanks very much, Gary.
Thank you. So we're just going to sharpen this chain. We're going to rotate the bar. Each time we sharpen the chain, it's quite a good idea to rotate the bar. So all I'm going to do is write on this top, because when I take the bar off, that will, when I rotate it now, that will be at the top. So I'll just turn the saw around, get my spanner. I haven't got my gloves on though. Okay. Just a quick brush down of the cover. Inspection in here. It's already put in here. This is called a chain catcher. It's just to catch the chain if the chain breaks or comes off while we're using it. Just always safety advice, make sure that's there. Okay. Remove the bar. Chain. So now I've just got a wee tool here. It's a depth gauge and also a cleaning tool. Just to make sure the rails are nice and clean where a chain runs through. And right down the end here, on either side, there's a couple of little holes that lets our oil. So when our chain is running, oil gets pumped through these holes and then it's picked up by the chain. That keeps the whole thing lubricated, so I need to make sure they're nice and clean as well. And then quick brush down. Don't get too clean? Okay. While I've got this off, I'll just wind this back. What I'm doing now is, when I put the bar back on, this whole here will sit on this little peg, and that adjusts my tension of my chain.
Plate, is it?
Pardon?
That's a plate.
It's a bar. Okay. And just while I've got that on, I didn't bring my tool down. I can feel along the sides. You have to see if there's feel any rails on the sides where the chain's been rubbed. And if there is, I can just give them a quick file, a flat file. Okay, now I'll put the top back on the top. Pop that back in there. Make sure I've got the chain facing the right way, so if I put it on backwards, it doesn't cut very well. You tried that, Jenny?
No, I haven't tried it, but Helen just saying she's tried that.
Probably quite candy hold your mouth, Gary.
Do you agree?
All those jobs are.
And of course, if someone's watching you, that's just right.
Wind that out a little bit. You can see. So now I wind it back out, and the chain starts to tension up. Before I go too far, put the cover back on.
So you don't need to put any oil around any of those pieces and under the cover?
No, the chain itself oiling. So most modern chainsaws are self-oiling. As the chain runs, it runs a pump that pumps oil through. On older ones, you might have a hand pump back here that you've got to remember to pump all the time. Just do that up. Okay, so ideally I'd like that a little bit tighter. So just lift the front of the bar up. And that's good now.
So how tight should it be, Gary?
I like it so I can just pull the chain out of the bar slightly.
Yeah.
So this one here is
It's a bit loose.
far too loose.
Yeah.
Well, that's about right there.
Right.
Okay. Now, so as I said before, this chain is slightly larger, and I normally use this file here, which is 732s on it. That as we're doing Jenny's, and I've got a file guide here for that saw there, and I've also got a file guide here. And on the file guide, we've got different angles that we can file the chain at: 30, 25 or 30 degrees. Most modern chains are around 30 degrees, and somebody's marked that in. So ideally I'd have this in a vise to stop any sideways movement. I put that on and I find 30 degrees and I just push through. Okay. And I want to do the same amount on each tooth if I can. Because we're mainly females here, I'm not being sexist at all, I brought a cheating system with me. Okay? That takes all the guesswork out of it. I'll just put that chain and take that file over there. This is something we've had for about 25 years. It's a lot of use.
Even if you're not female.
Even if you're not female, I use it most of the time. Okay, now I can slap it on the bar.
You don't get many of those now.
You don't get many of them now?
Got one wrong?
I've just ordered some from America. I think they're fantastic. Tap that on, top of the chain.
He's just saying that because he wants an election, doesn't he?
Yeah,
for my own use. I can adjust exactly how far down or up that goes. On here I've got a dial that sits at 30 degrees, and I can also adjust the angle side to side, which I've just got the set at 0. And on the back here we have a little stop, chain brake off, and on behind the back here is also another stopper, so I get every tooth even. If I don't file my teeth evenly, what happens is I start to do bananas in the wood, and it's not very good for the bar, and it's not very good for my temper, and it gets quite frustrating. So now I just put that on, and I can do 2 times, and nicer and nice.
How do you know where you start and stop? Just probably got on.
I like to use a vivid for exactly that purpose, and with Jenny's chain here, because it's nice and dirty, I can tell by the filings if I did that chain there. It's hard to tell. So I just colour that one in now, and I know that's my start and stop. Not the ideal setup, but there is a wee bit of flexing in here. But now if I just go through 3 nice even strokes, lifting up the file as I come through, and checking sharpness and just rotating it forward. Alright, who would like to come and volunteer?
Yeah, I'm going to help. I want to be ticked off by the tutor. Ticked off?
I'll just come around this side and steady that saw.
Do you lift it?
Yeah, lift it in between.
3 times?
Yeah.
4 to make sure.
4 to make sure.
Okay.
Okay.
And so you lift that?
Just lift this up.
Right.
You can rotate that back and just pull forward and stick into the next one. Because the teeth are opposite sides, you've got to go 2 teeth and then. Want to make sure.
Well, I might be doing it quite
Pause
a
and you
bit
stand
there.
people.
And then you pull the chain forward?
Yeah.
Will it pull forward?
We'll pull forward. What you could use is this and just push on either side. That
Might be a bit far, is it? Oh, yeah, I see that. They will be extra sharp.
They'll be
Yeah,
extra
they'll
sharp.
be extra sharp, yeah. Excuse me. No, I do it. We'll be doing this tonight. These are on the ones. Yeah, we're in the
Right, who's next? Yep, so if we bring it all the way back to the start and just push it through nice and evenly. So when the file is going through, the file only files in one direction. It does not file on the backward stroke, only on a forward stroke. Yeah, 2 clicks forward.
Oh.
2 clicks.
Is that pulling the chain
Oh,
around?
sorry. That's a 1 click, sorry. Teeth are.
We're only doing every second one.
Yeah, but the teeth are doubled up on one side there, whereas I still want to change together.
Oh.
What happens if you're left-handed? What happens if you're left-handed?
You do it on the left-hand side.
I'm not.
That's a really handy tool. Enable you to do it really well.
It takes a lot of the adjustment out of it.
Yeah, Gary, these.
Yeah.
Is it worthwhile using one because rather than having to take it in to be sharpened every time you dull it?
I think if you get a shop to sharpen one, it's probably about $15.
So it's not really worth taking the time that does.
Yeah. Maybe for a domestic person. I think they're well worth it.
Yeah.
Depends how much money you have.
Yeah.
Like how much?
I've got a man who does it, so
So would they be? Are they expensive, Gary?
So we've done these before in class. We've done the secateurs. So we know these are a parrot beak pair. So we've got the parrot beak, and so they cut only on one side. So they've got a flat side and a beveled side. So when we go to sharpen, you can pull them apart. These are falco pairs, so they will come apart. Some of them are more complicated, so if you do pull them apart, make sure you note how they come apart, so when you put them together again, it is easy. Otherwise it's very hard to do so. So these, just got a diamond cutter here, diamond file, and all I do is just tickling these up, just following the angle of the bevel. And you just see in a short time, because they're so blunt and horrible and dirty, I've already got a wee bit of a edge on them. So it doesn't always take much, but if you do often, do as I say, not as I do, as you know, you'll find it is far better. If you've got sharp tools, it is far easier to do the job. So these are good quality, so they sharpen up really easy.
Do it wrong and make them blunt.
If you do it wrong, it'll make them blunt. If you do it on the wrong side, it will make them blunt. Because if you do it on the wrong side, it means you have got a cutting edge against the parrot beak here, this flat surface. The cheaper pair, just exactly the same. Again, you've got a flat surface and the beveled one. There's also sharpen up quite well.
That's on the beveled side.
This is always on the bevel side. Always cut them on the bevel side. If you look at Neroli's loppers there, these are actually an anvil type here. So I'll just grab those off you Neroli if you don't mind. These have got a different action. This cuts onto a flat surface, an anvil. So this blade here can be sharpened on both sides. And these get a hell of a life. They're well worn, but this blade is actually can be sharpened on both sides because it's got anvil action. But more of a one blade going down against the surface. So loppers, all loppers, either anvil or parrot beak, or big ones like that.
So these ones here, they've got some quite nice chunks out of them. Probably used for gauze, or so I'd probably start with these ones. Find a good advice. I'd start with a file. Same thing with this file as a chainsaw file. File only files on the outward stroke, doesn't file on the backward stroke.
What quality or thickness is that file? Is that relevant?
No, it's quite a thin file, but it's also quite a fine file. So, depending on if you want a coarse finish, you'd use a coarse file, but this is a finer file, so it will take longer. If I was probably doing this in my own workshop, I'd use a coarse file to start with and then finish off on the fine file. And then finish right down on the diamond file.
Could you take it apart and use a grinder, Gary?
You could take it apart and use same sort of thing. If I use a grinder or an angle grinder, a lot of people know, I have to admit I've done this as well. I've used an angle grinder and I've started off with a really coarse stone on the angle grinder and you grind too much off. If you're going to use an angle grinder, you're far better to use just a sanding disc, which only takes a very small amount off, and do it quite a while, slowly. And other thing is you don't want your blades to heat up at all while you're grinding anything, because it softens it.
That feather
So,
had that really sharp, but that's too sharp.
So I'll carry on that wee bit further. That's sharpened up a little bit. Oh, somebody else can actually carry on with
I was
that.
going to say someone else can have a go at that.
Sharpen.
So is that an angle one or not?
No, we've still got the flat side on one side,
Right.
which is nice and smooth. Probably the other thing is, once I've sharpened it, depending on how much slops in between, I could give that a slight tighten as well. Quite importantly. So, flat side's still nice and flat, so I can just run along the beveled side of my file, and because of both sides, turn them over and do the other side as well.
I'm doing one too.
Same thing. So I'll leave those two there for you. We have a couple of knives. Do yours instead.
Yes, mine.
So I'll just put this transfer away. So
Don't you know these are grafting knives? So again, you've got bevel on one side and a flat surface on the other side. So we only sharpen on the bevel side.
so I've got a stone here, a sharpening stone, and with the sharpening stone we generally have a coarse side and then we have a finer side. Same sort of thing as the file and the diamond file. We've got a coarse file and then we go to the diamond file that is finer. So the coarse side's obviously to take out away more stuff, and then we move on to the finer side. Some people call them oil stones or sharpening stones. They're only an oil stone if you put oil on them. If you don't put oil on them and if you just put a bit of water or some spit, they'll be fine as the water is a lubricant.
So why do you use oil?
That's probably what they used to use many years ago. Water's just as good.
So you're saying you don't need to now?
Once you've used oil on one, you sort of got to carry on with oil because water will float on it. like that. Yes, that one's had oil on it.
I was just going to say that one's not.
So round a 15-degree angle, and I just keep pulling it back. Or round and round.
So you're looking at the same angle as what the lathe is. You're not eating too much into that. Just the other side.
Again, this one. Yours, Jimmy.
Yeah. And of course, only ever use it for grafting.
No, Jimmy.
And over time, just go to the other side. And I'll just grab it. Eventually I'll get back to the finer. Probably the big thing about sharpening everything, it's not a 5-minute job. You might be sitting there for, especially if you do it often and regularly, it is a 5-minute job. If you're like most of us and leave it till it gets really blunt, that's a half-hour job. Is that alright?
It would be, Gary, that's why you just be half more sharpening my mind. Not only use grafting.
Still miles away.
Yeah, no, it's all right.
Sorry.
The finer the file, the longer it takes one.
Yeah. You start with course on just getting this off, but it's the fine tuning that takes some time.
You can use different grades of stones.
Yeah, so on this one here, we've got a coarse on one side, a finer on the other, and this one's finer again. Same as a steel, which you use for your fine and coarse steels as well.
I've seen a similar thing. They use stones like that to sharpen high-speed skates.
Oh, yep.
And they use 2-3 different stones. They start with one, and they go to the next one, and they go to the next one.
Just get that.
But they don't use water, they use baby oil on the stone.
Oh, yeah.
Alright, we'll carry on with that today.
Give up on that one, he says.
No, I won't give up on that. What else do we have here?
Shovels. You've got shovels?
Shovels, carrot beak. We want to keep the back of the spade nice and square. This one here is being quite round at the back. And this is actually, and I'd probably prefer to use an angle grinder on a spade because you're not trying to get it sharp. You're just trying to smooth it all off and get it on the same angle. There is a grinder in the next room that we could use for it, which might be
quicker.
I'll go and use that and then bring it.
Goggles on.
Put that down. You just put your hand on mine. Yeah.
Not too much.
One of those is very good because you can get right in there.
It's the appropriate tool.
Yeah. Only way you're going to get right in the
I'm like, I don't know how much to do it. It's really good.
So do you do the other side? So for the lights,
Yeah.
You could get the carrot.
Yeah. And then,
I mean, I worked at it for quite a wee while, but it made no impression whatsoever. No, I'd say that's pretty well.
and then to get it
I'd say that's one.
go like
Both sides on the one arm here is there to make an angle. Oh, yeah. Yes. There's many elements that go into that.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed your programs and learned a lot from Constable Dow's report. And thank you for watching 45 South TV News. I have been Noel Bradshaw, and as usual you can contact us on 027 45 South, which is 027 4576 884, or south45tv@yahoo.co.nz. Visit us at 17 Itchen Street, and remember to like us on Facebook. So thank you, and thank you to the team for putting the program together. Good night.